Hi everyone, this is Ashley with CT Marina Digitals. I'm going to show you a tutorial on a different way to use some of my newer frame mock-ups in Photoshop. I started creating digital wall art in a new shop, so I've been making a lot of these, and I've kind of found a way to use them just a little bit easier than trying to sell them as like PSD layered files. I wanted to show you a few different ways you can use them by yourself and kind of manipulate them a little bit better, especially these ones that have light overlay on the image. Like we wouldn't want to take out this whole section within the frame and delete it and then add a new photo, because it's not going to have that realistic light overlay on the image. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go up to, I already have obviously have my file open that I want to use. I'm going to go up to File and Place Embedded and navigate to a folder where I have some images saved that I want to use. I'm just going to click on one of these, and now I'm going to resize it as best I can for now within the frame. Click that check mark, and I'm going to go over and I'm going to change the blending mode to multiply. Now this may or may not make your image a little bit darker. I actually, depending on the lighting scenario, you just kind of have to look at how it plays out and how it's going to be. But you can add different adjustment layers to the image if you need to bring up the highlights or anything. Say I wanted to make this image a little bit brighter after changing it to multiply blending mode, you could just add like a curves layer and create a clipping mask by clicking that box right there. And you could bring up the highlights a little bit in that image. That actually does look a lot better. But as you can see, since I changed the blending mode to multiply, you can now see the original shadows of the frame and the light coming from the window in the mock-up. And it just makes it look a lot more realistic. I'm going to zoom in so I can show you. So you can see some of the image is outside the frame. There's a couple of different ways that you can correct this. You can create a layer mask on the image and just use a black brush at 100% opacity. And you can just brush off. I'm going to just do it real quickly. And these are intended to use these on your website, so it does not need to be perfect. These are going to be, you should be resizing these for web anyways. So if it's not perfect, it's completely fine. Nobody's even going to notice. I did create these to be able to use in client galleries and for mock-ups to display maybe a wall or something that you're selling, but these are not for commercial use. You cannot use these in part or whole to resell them yourself. Now to do a straight line, what I just did there, I click here, hold down Shift on your keyboard, and then drag up until it's gone. Another click with your mouse, hold Shift, and that'll do a completely straight line for you. Now that looks good, but if you run into the frame you're using is not a straight line, say it's tilted forward a little bit or it's tilted backward a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete the layer mask so I can show you that way to use it. Actually, just kidding. I want to keep this down here, so I'm just going to take my white brush real quick and I'm going to paint that back on there so I can show you what I mean. Okay, so if I zoom back in again, I'm going to paint that back off down here. Okay, so you can grab your move tool, click on your image, not the mask, on your image, and then click on one of these boxes out here. And then click on this icon up here. It's a warp tool. Oh, I'm going to have to change this to 1 second. I'm going to merge these layers. You can't do it to a smart object, so you can just right click it and raster size layer. Where's it at? Right there. So that way we can use our warp tool on that. And that's only if you use Place Embedded. If you're copying and pasting your image in, it's not going to give you that. Okay, and then you can just drag your image inside the frame where it needs to be. And this isn't gonna mess up your image if you're just doing it to the corners little by little. Obviously, if you were like dragging from way in the center of the image, that's gonna mess with your image. But just doing this to the outside corners and edges is not going, it's not gonna mess up your image. I don't really know where that frame ends right there. Okay. Okay, and then zoom in. That looks like it needs to go up a little bit. You can obviously do that as many times as you need to. That needs to go up. Okay, done. And that's a very simple, pretty way to use these. I'm going to be coming out with more of these, but I tried to stay away from these at first because I didn't want to play around with blending modes, and I just did like PNG layers where you can just put the image behind it. But I think something like this can be really pretty if you're wanting to do like ones by the window and stuff like that. Like this one as well, you could, I want to show you what I mean. So if you were to do that, if I were to have this as a PSD file, I would typically go in, highlight that, and delete it. So you would have to, let's go up and place embedded here and just pick, we'll just do the same image so it can kind of show you the difference. We could do that and just put it behind there. And then we would have to also, first of all, it's not going to look too realistic because the shadows that are on, or the light shadows that are on the wall are not on the image. You could like use a dodge tool or something to make it look better, but it's not going to look as realistic. You would have to go in and then also click up here on your layer image. I want to show this because you can still do this, but I recommend just using the multiply blending mode and then using adjustment layers on that. You would have to go down to your down here and add a drop shadow. Obviously play with your angle. It would be coming from this way because that's where the light's coming from on the image. You can change the color. I would maybe do like a dark brown because you want to stay kind of within the colors of the image that you're using. And then you can mess around with your distance, size, just to feather that. And that can look realistic too. And it's still pretty and it looks fine, but then you're also going to have to go back in and kind of mess around with, like, this is very bright. It just doesn't look as realistic. So if I go ahead and delete this image, if I just go back to open, go back to file, place embedded, click on that image again, resize. And now you have to fill it, so I'm going to have to drag out a little bit there. I'm going to change my blending mode so I can see that my edges. Obviously it's going to crop parts, but again, this is just if you're just using these for your website for mockup, that's not going to matter. And now for this one, I would not use warp tool. You probably could, but it might, see, let's test it out here. Could drag this all the way down, meet the corners. You might, that just might be how you want to do it. But this one actually looks like we could just brush it off with the layer mask, which for me is faster and it is easier. See, I don't want that to warp her foot at all or her dress, but I think it would still look okay on the edges if you didn't have to see it messed her up right here. So for this one, I would just at least get rid of most of it with your brush, and then if you have a tiny edge left, I would use that warp tool to drag it down. So I'm just going to create a layer mask. Hold shift, drag it, shift, drag. Okay, and now you could go back. I think I took too much there, or maybe I didn't. but you could still go in and use that. You have to raster size it. Use that warp tool to fix it even after you brush it. And then that way you're not moving so much of the image to where it's going to warp your subject as well. There we go. I would probably add, to this one, I would probably add a little bit of either up the exposure or just add a curves layer and up that just a little bit. And now as you can see, let's see if I can go back in my history. Oh, I can't because I went to open. This looks way better than just trying to delete the whole center and just place your image in there and then add shadows and all that stuff. So yeah, that's the new way I'm doing it. So I'm going to start adding some more mock-ups to the shop. There are already some in there, and they include frames for you to create your own frames in there as well. I believe I'm also going to add a frame pack to the shop for some mock-ups that I have that don't already have the frames in the images if you're wanting to use something different. But that's it. If you have any questions, you can send me a message. If you are a studio photographer, I would love for you to join my group on Facebook. I will link that in the description. If you are wanting more tutorials like this, I have tons of them on the YouTube channel. I will also link that in the description.